What is this? I don't know, because I see nothing there. What the shit? What is this? I can't hear nothing.
I got you, Lawyer.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You done with three or any of that? Yes. I should have stopped, I should have did it 6 months ago. A lot of this stuff has actually made no sense to me after you could do it online. I got all three of them for $6. Yeah, it's a good one.
Is that gonna hurt? I'll look into that.
Yeah, that's all right. Yeah, it is. Yeah. Warm back up. Thank you, Daniel.
Hey, Dan. Yep. I got 301, 302, and 303, like $456.
Awesome.
CE.
Yeah.
All right, thanks for being here. We're gonna hop in, get started. Today's topic is miscellaneous forms. So these are forms that we don't necessarily use all the time, yet when we do need them, are we using them at the correct time and are we completing them correctly? And so a little bit of when should we and am I completing it correct? So one of the first things that I want you to notice is that under agreement to amend contract, in parentheses, it says amendment number. So there can be multiple of these. So one does not negate the other. So let's say that we call this one amendment number 1, and we are going to extend the due diligence period. We can do that with this one, number 1. That's all we want to do right now. Then we may have a number 2 that either reduces the purchase price or maybe extends closing, whatever the case may be. So then you would go amendment number 2, amendment number 3, whatever it is that you're changing. So the point I think of it that I'm trying to make is don't wait and think I got to get them all on one form. You don't. Use it as those things come up. Yes, because sometimes when you wait and okay, now we got 3 different things we got to negotiate. We got to extend due diligence, we want a price reduction, and we want and a closing extension. The seller may not be as willing to negotiate. Yeah, 3 at once. They may not be able to be as willing to negotiate those things. So go ahead and get them in agreement as they arise. Yes. So again, as always, just like on all forms, make sure it is the buyer's full legal name, no nicknames, no pseudonyms, and same with seller. Remember, a buyer can be an entity as well. A seller can be it can be human, can be an entity, it can be a trust. So just making sure that we are stating the names correctly. This agreement to amend can be used on the residential offer to purchase and also the vacant land offer to purchase as well. So the first one, additional buyer. So sometimes we need to add an additional buyer. Maybe they need another person in order to qualify for the loan. So we may need to add a buyer. Sometimes we may need to remove a buyer or a seller. So same thing, they may not be able to qualify with both buyers. And so we got to take one off because this one has great credit and can qualify. This one has horrible credit and it's pulling this one down. So we got to pull that buyer off. Sometimes we may remove a seller as well. Reasons we might remove a seller: death, divorce, those sorts of things, that they are no longer bound by this contract for whatever reason. Yes. And again, the rest of them are just pretty much self-explanatory. Purchase price, additional earnest money, what the date of the additional earnest money is. So again, if you've got a due diligence date and you have additional earnest money being due after the day after that due diligence date ends, if you're extending due diligence, you would also need to extend that additional earnest money deposit date as well. Due diligence fee, due diligence period, settlement date. So if the box is checked underneath, it changes the 7-day period to a 4-day period. So if your seller is like, yep, I'll extend it, but I don't want to give them another 7 days because the contract allows for an additional 7 days, they check this box, then it changes from 7 to 4. And then expenses, this would be, okay, we negotiated repairs, seller's not going to do the repairs, but they're going to give us $5,000 in closing costs or whatever the case may be. This is where that you would put that. If we added a home warranty, if the escrow agent changed. So just a reminder on your offer to purchase, if you have earnest money, whether it is initial or additional, you must name an escrow agent on the offer to purchase. It can't be TBD. If it's initial, it can't be TBD. If it is additional, it can be TBD, but then you got to follow it up with this and say, who is it? Who's holding it? And sometimes the escrow agent may change. This is where you would use this if the escrow agent changed as well. And then again, signatures, just remember entity trust. It must always be a human that signs on behalf of the entity or the trust. So, and you have to be careful with this in DocuSign because DocuSign wants to immediately set it up with those initials. So like, for example, if the entity SM Ward Construction Inc., DocuSign is who the seller is or the buyer, DocuSign wants to set it up to be SMWI, when in fact it needs to be Scott Ward that is signing. So a human always has to sign on behalf of an entity or a trust. Any questions on this one?
Good question.
Yeah.
Of course. Acknowledgement of receipt of earnest money. This is for the second one.
If the earnest money changes. So in other words, it would be if
The initial offer, that's
Yeah.
suffices. Is there another, I guess what my question also is there another addendum that acknowledges receipt?
on the offer to purchase. Yes, so
On-
receipt of earnest money is on the offer to purchase. And so you would only use this if it changes. So let's
you
say,
added in addition.
yes, so let's say, for example, we scheduled our closing with Ashley Carter. Well, Ashley, the only day that my buyer can close is on a Friday. Ashley Carter doesn't work on Fridays. So we would have to find another attorney. So then we would have to get that escrow money from Ashley Carter into Jill Britt's trust account. Any other questions on that one?
Aaron, would you mind running the settlement date part by me again?
Oh, sure, absolutely. Yes, okay, so, all right, here we go, settlement date. Okay, so this is changing what our settlement date was gonna be from the original contract. Okay, so we've moved it from September the 30th to October, we need to move it to October the 1st. Okay, so we're gonna change this, but my seller says, we'll move it to October the 1st, but then I don't want to, I don't want to give them another 7 days. So we, built into the contract is a 7-day grace period, if you will. So, we're closing on this date. But if we happen to close the next day, we're still within that 7-day window. So you wouldn't have to do an extension only if it went beyond. So if we had to move it to October the 8th, then we would need to do an agreement to amend to move the closing date to October the 8th because it's outside of that 7-day grace period. And so if my seller said, I'll extend it to the 8th, but I'm not giving them another 7 days, I'm only gonna give them 4 days. You would check that box.
Okay, that
Yes.
makes sense, thank you.
Yes, yes. And these are calendar days, and and the reason for the 4-day as opposed to the reason they came up with 4, like why 4, you know, is, think about a weekend because these are calendar days. So if we were supposed to close on a Friday, now we've got Saturday, so, you know, the ideal was it may get us through a weekend.
Okay, makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. Any other questions on this one? All right. What's my next favorite one? Oh, cool. So this is Owners Association disclosure form. So because you have highlighted, you have the highlighted versions of what the changes were. And so one of the very first changes you will see is that last year when they created this form, you only used it for new construction or vacant land. So as you can see, that has now been struck through. So this is now a required form if the property is in has an HOA. It's a little bit of an adjustment. The reason being is that this actually says what's covered in the HOA. The RPODS does not. The RPOD simply says who's the association and the contact. It doesn't tell me what am I getting for my $250 a month HOA fee or whatever the case may be. So this is where it is, it's disclosing on here what is covered in that fee, and also disclosure of any other dues, fees, or special assessments payable by the development's property owner. So if there's a special assessment, a pending special assessment, this is where we would need to disclose this as well. And then same thing, no unsatisfied judgments. The fees that are charged by the Owners Association, this is how they are to be paid out. So you're stating how they are to be paid out. Some of the things that I've talked to you about on the offer to purchase. Number 6, this actually helps the attorneys. So we've talked about a couple of things on the offer to purchase that really is just a statement that helps the attorneys be able to get the information that they need. So by signing this, the seller is authorizing the attorney to contact the HOA community to get all of this stuff that they need.
Karen.
Yes.
Would this be something that's filled out by the seller's agent and like downloaded on MLS?
This would be filled out by the seller. the seller's agent can assist them with filling it out. And then, yes, it would need to be an attachment in MLS, just like, so this now becomes a disclosure. So you've got R codes, you've got MOG, and you've got owners association addendum if it's in an HOA.
So ideally, this would already be signed and in documents on MLS. In a perfect world.
In a perfect world, ideally, yes. So that's the other part that you need to be aware of. If you're on the buyer side and it's not loaded, then you need to get it from the listing agent. Sometimes that might be a hard conversation because they are like, because, well, we didn't have to do this last year. Well, I understand we didn't have to do it last year, but this is this year, and now we do have to do it. And it is a disclosure. I need to know, my people need to know, what is that money paying for?
If you could submit the offer without this and put it on the seller's agent to fill it out and get it back to you.
Yeah.
You don't have to have it simultaneously.
Ideally,
Ideally, you would like.
Yes,
They'd be like, oh, I'm not sure, let me ask the seller, go ahead and get the offer in, then put it on them to get it back to you.
yes. Yes, because you would also want to make sure that you, under addendum, you would want to make sure that you check that box. Yes,
And for Kevin's example, that was a good point. Would that be contingent? And like, what if they came back and said, oh, it's 500 a month for HOAs when you thought it was 100, but you put your offer in without having like this information?
yeah, I mean, so that is how much it is, should be on, yeah, you're required to put it in MLS.
Okay, so that has to be there upfront.
That's correct.
Okay,
Yes,
gotcha.
yes,
So this is just what it covers and like what's included with it.
exactly.
Okay, gotcha.
So as the buyer's agent, you would never know that. Unless you did business in the community.
Right, yes,
You wouldn't want to check that anyway.
right, like, I'm not checking, like,
Right.
the seller, like, the seller knows what they pay, what's covered. And, what they pay for each month. I, as the buyer agent, may or may not know that, like I said, like you said, if I'm familiar with the community, familiar with the subdivision, then I might know. However, the seller has documentation from the HOA, or they can obtain the documentation from the HOA in order to correctly and completely fill out the paperwork. So yes, just a reminder, again, now this is, so in command, it says conditional. Conditional means it's conditional until it's not conditional. So if it's an HOA, it's now required. It's no longer conditional. It's just like lead-based paint. It's conditional in command, because if the house was built after 1978, you don't have to have it. But if it was built prior, now it's a required form. So sometimes people get confused on conditional. Conditional does not mean optional. Conditional means something has sparked it into where it now became required.
If the conditions are met, then it's required.
You got it,
Yeah.
exactly. Yes, exactly. Any questions on this one? All right, Form 710. This form has this form was updated to, you can do a whole lot of things on this form now that previously weren't on there, and we had to use a separate form for it. So the Real Estate Commission did consolidate. I think we got rid of 8 forms with the forms changes in July, which is a good thing. Let's, that's one less number or name of a form I have to remember. This agency agreement amendment, you'll see just like the agreement to amend contract, there's numbers on there. So there may be multiple of these. Again, one does not override or negate the other. This is used for residential, also used for vacant land as well. So what am I amending? Am I amending my listing agreement? Am I amending my vacant lot agreement? Am I amending my buyer, my exclusive buyer agency, non-exclusive lease, tenant, and auction? Probably not going to have those very often. So you can use it. What?
You didn't pass out copies.
Oh, did I not? You're right. I did not.
I didn't think it
I
was-
thought I
was
was
gonna say
thinking
anything.
one.
No,
Thank you.
My eyes on. Thank
Kevin Conn.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
thanks for keeping me on my toes there, Kevin.
In case you guys haven't taken 302, I'm in the middle of 302 right now. I know it's perfect. I think it's sidetracked. This is covered in 302.
Ah, okay.
So
Yes, so so we use this form to extend a listing agreement to so extension, same thing with whether it's a buyer or a listing extension. How long are we extending it? If we are adjusting the compensation, both on the firm side, or if we're adjusting the compensation, the cooperative compensation can be done on this form. You would then want to follow up with a updated Form 220 for the cooperative compensation. Dual agency. So we used to have a whole different form for this. This is where we may need to change our agency relationship. We already have an agency relationship because we either already have a buyer agency agreement or we have a listing agreement. And so now we may need to change that agency relationship. A couple of reasons that would be changed is so let's say on my initial listing agreement, I had them sign that the firm is allowed to act as a dual agent, and then they initialed the same agent is not allowed, and will go into designated dual agency. And so let's say that for whatever reason that changes and the seller says, okay, the neighbor wants to buy the house and we want you to facilitate it and all of that sort of thing. For whatever reason, I might move into same agent, dual agent. And so that's where we can change that on here. The most likely thing to happen is they authorize the firm to act as a dual agent, and then they authorize the same agent may act as a dual agent. And then all of a sudden, we're in a designated dual agency situation. So it's Kevin's listing. Kevin had them sign, as we recommend, allow dual and then authorize designated dual. Okay, but your buyer agreement might have said does authorize same agent to act in a dual agent capacity. But because he's designated, you now have to be designated. Those two agency relationships have to match.
So that's checked down here. That has to be followed up by another approval form, correct?
I can just add it right.
This doesn't suffice just by checking off the box.
Yes,
It does.
Yeah.
So we have to fill out.
This is how you
This and that.
change.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is how you
So it
change
stops there.
what was already in
It'll
place.
supersede the other way.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yes, yep. Same thing with listing price and any other amendments. So other amendments might be offering 5,000 in seller pay closing costs, something that they want you to advertise out in MLS. So we just need to make sure that we have in writing that they want this to happen. Questions about this, particularly that dual agency section? I know that can be a little confusing.
I have a quick question on the amendment number.
Mhm.
So is that the amendment number, like for how many amendments are on the contract, or is that how many amendments of this?
Of this
form?
particular form.
Okay.
Yes.
Gotcha.
So in other words, we may, I might do an amendment to extend my listing agreement. Okay. And then I finally got them talked into doing a price reduction. I'll do amendment number 2 to do a price reduction. So they, again, they can all stack on top of each other. One doesn't override the other unless, so sometimes you may do a list price, sorry, a reduction in the listing price. And then we might do another one. So that second one would be the one that is in play, but it doesn't change, like on this one, if we've extended, it doesn't modify that in any way.
Gotcha.
Everybody good with that one? Oh, this one's just. This one's really quick. This is the FHA financing addendum. Essentially what changed on here was just verbiage under the VA portion of the addendum to be more in line with the language of the VA. So again, you can just kind of see what has been struck through. The first paragraph is versus how it used to be. It just, the only thing again that changed was just the wording on how VA, how it needed to be in compliance with VA. And the other thing that they changed is if buyer obtains a VA loan, the DBA may or may not require certain inspections to be performed. Essentially what they did is they just struck out well, water, septic, sewer, and or wood destroying insects, because that used to be primarily what VA required. You had to get those inspections with a VA loan. And so they've just kind of broadened it to say, yeah, we might want some other kind of inspection as well.
Sounds like the government.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly,
Let's make it
exactly.
A little more vague.
Yes, yeah, let's be a little more vague, absolutely. Yes, so any questions on, nothing changed in the FHA part. And the other part that changed is essentially it reads in more in line with the FHA that if the house doesn't appraise, then the buyer is entitled to their earnest money back. And they're not obligated to purchase the property. Any questions on that one? All right. Moving on. I think I have a copy of this one for you also. I apologize. Additional provisions addendum. So the additional provisions addendum is used at time of offer. It is never used after you are under contract. It's only used at time of offer. I sometimes see people using this as like a DDRA. That's not what it is. It is, look, Jonathan's looking at
Oh,
me.
sorry, what is that acronym?
DDRA, due diligence repair agreement.
Oh,
Dude,
okay.
I figured that one out like last year, Thanksgiving.
It is.
I was like,
Oh, bad
they
news.
need, but I gotta get it to them right now.
Right.
This was like, this is what that is, we use it all the time.
They are trying.
Good, there you go.
So this, again, additional provisions is used at time of offer. Never used after there's a fully executed contract. Biggest takeaway there. So sometimes you might have an expiration of offer. That would be number one. Time is of the essence on that. I don't have copies of that one. I'm sorry. I don't know.
I know where I can find them.
Yeah, I don't know how that one didn't get run through the copier, but or it might still be sitting on the copier. So expiration of offer, just a reminder on expiration of offer, once that time passes, that offer is no longer valid. You got to do a new offer. So if we said that our offer expires on 20 at 6 p.m. and it's 7 p.m. when it's signed, you got to do a new offer. That offer is no longer valid. So just make sure that the time frame is reasonable for both the buyer and for the seller to make.
Typically, is that 3 days?
No, I mean, it depends. I mean,
Market's on fire.
yeah, if the market's on fire, it might be, you know, we want to know by,
Tonight.
Yeah.
In a market like now when it's normal, 2 days. 3 days.
I think it depends on the property as well. Like, you know, is it, oh, this property just hit the market. I know there's probably going to be multiple offers.
I know in 24 hours.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's reasonable.
Yeah. Also, it could be that your buyers might be in town just for the weekend. And we need to know before they leave on Sunday, especially if we've got to deliver due diligence funds. They need to be able, you know, unless they're able to do it electronically. So a couple of different reasons that you might use a expiration. Septic system installation or modification. So again, this form can be used with both residential and vacant land offer to purchase. So if the offer is, I don't want to say contingent, but if the offer is subject to the buyer being able to get a conventional septic perk for 3 bedrooms or however, you know, the number of bedrooms, then that's where you would include that. So mostly used on for vacant land. Yeah. Rental.
What if the house that it's the 4-bedroom house, it only perks 3?
Then it's not a 4-bedroom house.
That company offer. Want it to
You
be
want
4-bedroom?
it, you want to upgrade it? Sure, you could.
Want to make sure that it can.
Yeah.
Can do that for resale, or for whatever reason,
Yeah.
buyer might.
Yeah.
That would
Yeah.
be appropriate to
Yeah.
use. Okay,
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Rental income investment property. So this is where you are requesting rent rolls and expenses, leases, anything that might be accompanied with an investment property. So if you have a buyer that's purchasing an investment property, that they're going to continue to use as an investment property, you request all of this documentation, and you put a deadline on when you want to have that in order to be able to review it. So if you don't receive it by the deadline, because additional provisions addendum is now part of the contract, then it makes our contract void.
Null and void.
Yeah. Yes. Okay, number 4, this is where I see people using it instead of the due diligence repair agreement. Again, this is never used after you're under contract. This would be agreed upon repairs or improvements that are part of the, again, I don't want to say contingent because we don't have contingent offers, but subject to the closing. So let's say, for example, the garage door is broken. They disclose to us the garage door is broken. The seller has ordered a new garage door to be installed. It just isn't here yet. So if I'm making an offer when that garage door is broken, I'm going to use additional provisions addendum and say seller to repair garage door.
No, for
Or, there's a window that has a broken seal. We've ordered the window, something that that the buyer is aware of at the time of showing that they want repaired prior to closing. Go ahead and put it in here because there's no guarantee that the seller will negotiate any repairs after this is signed. Yes.
So that could be used prior to, like the day I show it, that wood is broke, but we're gonna fix it. So we use that.
Absolutely.
So I do the property, the home inspection, and they say, oh, this refrigerator's not working, but we're gonna fix it. You could use it then. as well.
No, you can never use it once you're under contract. Once you're under contract, then you use the DDRA, the due diligence repair
Oh,
agreement.
that's- okay.
Yes.
Oh,
So after you do your inspections, now you've got this list of all of these other things that you can then ask the seller to do. Yes. So just remember, the seller's not obligated to do any of those things. They are obligated to do this because it's part of the contract. So if they don't replace that garage door, then we're either not closing, or you're gonna have to give a concession to the buyer, or, whatever the case may be. So again, things that we know need repair, even though the seller says they're gonna fix it. Not if it's not in writing.
That's right.
Yes, if it's not in writing, they are not gonna fix it.
Said maybe,
That's right.
Yeah, I changed my mind. Yeah, yes.
you misunderstood.
Oh, but that was before you asked me for all of this other stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's, yeah. Mhm. That's why we have them signed this way. Additional provisions addendum would also be used, if there is a manufactured home on the property. Again, vacant lands, pool spa inspection preparation. This is just determining who's responsible for de-winterization and re-winterization if necessary. If you don't check one of those boxes, then the buyer is responsible for it. But this would be a case where they would ask the seller, because the seller has the relationship with the pool company, that, instead of the buyer trying to figure out, well, who do I get to come out here, might be something that they ask the seller to pay for. And again, we've talked about this off-site or separate septic lot, boat slip, garage, parking space, storage unit. This is where sale of the property shall include the following. It's either deeded, leased, seller owned, or HAA owned septic lot, boat slip, garage, parking space, or storage unit. Describe any and all. Again, in most cases, for us anyway, it's going to be a deeded separate septic lot. Or a, so if you have an off-site septic, then you're actually getting two lots. One of them your septic is on, the other one your house is on. Because the land wouldn't perk, or there wasn't enough room for an adequate septic system on the lot where your house is. So you might have you might be on lot 108, and then you also have lot 108B. Because that's where your septic system is.
I get that.
Donna Marie, did you have a question?
Yes, okay. I wasn't sure you could hear me. So this form is used before the start of the contract,
It is used at time of offer.
the time of the offer. Okay, so for instance, where they have the agreed upon repairs and or improvement, and the seller decide, okay, I'm not fixing the garage door, which means that during due diligence, you can't make that as a request. If
Well, I
they
mean, you
go,
did, but if they said at the start they weren't gonna fix it, this is where it is that making that repair becomes a part of the contract when you use this form. So if the seller agrees to fix the garage door, then you can ask with this form, because you know it's broken. If they say, no, I'm not gonna do it, then they don't sign this form, then you can ask again with a due diligence repair agreement. But if they didn't agree the first time, they probably aren't going to agree the second time either.
okay,
It's a little tricky.
thank you.
It has to be made at the time of
Yeah.
offer, period,
Yes,
regardless of what's checked.
yes,
Gotcha.
yes. Any other questions on this one? Additional provisions addendum. Biggest takeaway on this one? Used at time of offer, never used once you're under contract. All right. So these are our new termination forms. She's out here. Oh, he's in what used to be Jason's office. Yes, yep. Okay, so our terminations, again, we went from 6 down to 3. So we cut 3 forms out. Because we used to have one for one version for vacant land, one version for residential. There was no need for there to be,
So
it said the same thing, yes. So now we have 3. So this is the unilateral right by the buyer to terminate the contract. And then you've got your reasons for termination. We're during the due diligence period. The property is not in substantially the same or better condition at closing as on the date of the offer, reasonable wear and tear accepted. Buyer's right to terminate for property's lack of governmental compliance following notice to the seller and opportunity to cure. Seller's delay in settlement and closing beyond the time permitted in the contract or as amended. And then we've got, if it's a backup contract, their right to terminate that. If it's a short sale, their right to terminate that. Buyer's right to terminate under the FHA VA financing addendum. Property didn't appraise, and so that would be the box that they would check for that. And then the other two, these are where it's separate, Form 2T only, non-receipt of signed residence property disclosure statement or mineral, oil and gas rights, excuse me, prior to submission of buyer's offer. Due diligence fee refunded if you don't get those documents. So that would be a reason that the buyer is terminating. Other reason on where you would use Form 12T, which is your vacant land, non-receipt of the signed vacant land disclosure statement prior to submission of the buyer's offer.
Okay, so I have a question.
Yep.
So my question here, the last item where it said Form, I guess it's 2T only, is that the only time they can get the due diligence fee refunded?
Yes. Yes, if they are not in receipt of disclosures, then yes, they have the right to get their due diligence money returned. But that needs to happen with, like, on day 4.
So none of these others is qualify for any due diligence refund.
That is correct.
Okay.
So these are the only ones that we would ever check. There's 2 more boxes. We ain't checking them. There's a reason that they're separate. And it says buyer is strongly advised to seek legal counsel before choosing one of the following 2 options for termination. Buyer gives notice of termination and alleges that the seller has breached the contract. Tread very carefully. And also they need to have a conversation with an attorney.
That's assuming one of the above has not been checked.
One of the above has to be checked. This is the only way that, I mean, it doesn't, not the only. In most cases, a buyer is going to unilaterally terminate because of one of those. Now,
In
if
which case that would need to be checked.
correct, you only check.
Pick one above,
Pick one.
fine. If you
Yes.
don't pick any
Yeah.
of the above, you gotta pick one of the bottom.
Yeah, if you don't, exactly. If you don't pick any of the above, then you gotta pick one of those. Just tread very carefully on picking.
Attorneys are gonna get involved.
Yeah, attorneys are involved when it comes to that. Because the second one is buyer gives notice of termination without providing a reason after expiration of the due diligence period. And again,
So you almost, it would be advised that you would have an attorney prepare a reason. to cancel this contract if you check one of the bottom 2.
no, I mean, they can check one of the bottom 2, but it may become a legal matter because
They give a reason.
no, it may become a legal matter because the seller might say, well, I'm going after damages because you don't have the unilateral right to terminate this contract. So a seller might sue a buyer for damages for terminating without providing a reason after due diligence. Same thing. Breach of contract. Seller might seek damages for the allegation of breach by the seller. Either way, those 2 boxes are going to involve attorneys.
Right.
Yeah. Because, sometimes we get like, our buyers get emotional, they get a little hot-headed sometimes. And it's like, well, I think the seller knew that. I think the seller knew that, whatever, and they're like, and they breached the contract because they didn't disclose it.
I talked to the neighbor.
Yeah,
I get you every time, won't they?
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
Neighbors,
yeah,
I can tell you stories.
yeah. So again, just be very careful with either of those 2 boxes. This only has to be signed by the by the buyer, unless there's earnest money. If there's earnest money and the buyer is requesting return of earnest money, That's the only time the seller needs to sign it if they do or do not agree. Just keep in mind, we can have, the buyer can unilaterally terminate the contract, but we don't necessarily have to be in agreement with how the earnest money is dispersed. So there may be, you might have two of these forms for the same property that might look a little different. So one of them might be, okay, and the seller, the buyer checks, seller does, and seller says, no, past due diligence, you ain't gonna earnest money back. So then the seller would come back and says, does not, now we've got a
That's not
dispute.
dispute.
Now we've got a dispute, yes.
That's when the fun starts.
Yeah, not for me, because we don't have trust account, yay.
That's why Keller would never kill it.
Oh,
Smart.
I've been to court for earnest money. As the
So
broken
I have another question.
Okay.
So I'm looking at all the reasons in number 2, the top part. Suppose
Yeah.
none of those fits, but the buyer wants to terminate for other reasons. So you're saying that because I had a situation like this, and we did check the second one where it said the buyer give notice of termination, saying the seller breached the contract. Thank God nothing happened from the seller side, but that's what we did because we couldn't choose any of the top ones.
What was the reason for termination?
The property didn't have any utilities.
Okay, well, that would be a breach of the seller. In that case, it would be a breach of the seller, and that, I mean, that's where, yes, if one of the ones up above does not pertain, then you know, you gotta pick one below. Just know, just tread carefully with that. That, I mean, that's a legitimate reason, but you know, sometimes it's just you know, the buyer being mad or, you know, something to that extent.
Mhm. All right,
Any other
thanks.
questions?
Speaking of that, Karen, so I noticed in here in all caps, it says that NC Realtors make no representations about legal validity of the form. So what is our role in this? Like, do we hand this to the buyer and say, here, fill this out if you want to do this? Or like, what's our part in this?
So we give them the form. Here's the reasons. What's the reason? You know, I mean, we can complete the form, but we want to educate them on completing the form. And we're, you know, because we're also educating them on the reasons that they can terminate unilaterally.
All right. Gotcha. That makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah. All right, now we got the flip side. As you can see, this one is much shorter. So this is unilateral termination from the seller to the buyer. So there are a lot fewer reasons that a seller can unilaterally terminate than there are for a buyer to unilaterally terminate. Number one reason, buyer's failure to timely deliver the due diligence fee or initial earnest money deposit following written notice from the seller. So just a reminder, they have to have the written notice. So if due diligence is due at time of acceptance, so that's immediate, and then initial earnest money within 5 days of fully executed contract. It has to be deposited into the escrow account. So if it's day 3 and we don't have any due diligence money, and they're already scheduling inspections and, and we've hounded and where's this due diligence money? We need this money, whatever else. You're getting ghosted by the buyer agent. Then this is where you would use the demand for funds form. And they have 1 business day in which to provide certified funds. And if they don't, then the seller has the right to unilaterally terminate the contract.
So you would never allow an inspection without that due diligence?
No, I wouldn't. No.
Right.
And I mean, sometimes you just have a feeling like Rachel called me about one last week and she's like, I just have, she's like, they gave us a personal check for the first due diligence and it wasn't legible. So the bank,
Couldn't cash it.
yeah, so
Of
the
course you
bank,
can't.
the bank rejected it. And so then they wanted, they're like, oh, okay, we'll send you another check. And it's like, no, we want certified funds. And so that's what I told Rachel. I said, even if you're demanding the type of funds, again, if that check bounced or whatever the case may be, if it didn't work the first time, it's probably not gonna work the
Do
second
you
time.
find people trying to game the system where they would be like, oh, we'll do the home inspection tomorrow,
Yeah,
and you don't get the due diligence, figuring that they did the inspection, they didn't like what they see, they didn't want to give you the due diligence.
yeah, we had a situation like that happen. Yeah, where they, it wasn't due diligence. I mean, they delivered the due diligence money and then they had the inspections and then they tore up the earnest money. They never delivered the earnest money. Because they had the inspections and so, yeah. So demand, for funds, if you don't get them, and then buyer's failure to timely deliver any additional earnest money deposit. Written notice is not required on that one because it says time is of the essence on the contract. So, monies, non-received monies, seller can unilaterally terminate. Seller can unilaterally terminate if the buyer delay in settlement is beyond that 7-day grace period. Especially if, like, this is the 3rd time we've extended it, and then, at some point in time, the seller is just gonna be like, it ain't happening. And, the writing comes on the wall. And then also seller's right to terminate under the short sale addendum. Again, seller strongly advised to seek legal counsel before choosing one of the next 2 reasons for termination. Seller gives notice of termination and alleges that buyer has breached the contract. Okay, now the buyer can breach the contract by delay in settlement. So, but they're 2 different things. We're specifically saying why. So a breach of the contract by the buyer would be something other than the delay in settlement. And then also seller gives notice of termination without providing a reason. So seller terminates, gives no reason, I changed my mind. Buyer most likely will be going after any due diligence monies, any earnest monies, any expenses on inspections, that sort of thing. There has not been a case of specific performance.
Who's gonna ask you?
One in the state of North Carolina.
Really?
Yep, has not.
Just gonna ask.
Yes,
Who knew that?
I did. All right, any questions on this one?
I just have a general question for the group. So,
Okay.
has anyone ever had a situation where either buyer or seller and they terminate and they decided to take it further, like have attorneys involved and all that drama? Or they just left it alone?
Oh, no, there's been many cases where that has happened, but we aren't involved in it. I mean, once it becomes a legal matter, if a buyer or seller decides to seek legal action against the other the other party, that's all handled by attorneys. We're not involved in it in any way, shape, or form. We sell real
Okay.
estate.
Okay.
Okay, termination agreement. This is mutually, we use this form when both buyer and seller have reached an agreement to terminate. So they both agree. The other form wouldn't pertain because it's not one of the reasons, or in most cases, you're going to use this after due diligence period has expired, and buyer couldn't get the loan. I'm just going to use an example. Buyer can't get the loan. Okay, well then you're not buying my house. Seller unilaterally agrees, seller mutually agrees to terminate because seller wants to get their house back on the property, back on the market.
You gotta sign it.
So,
Beating it
again, they don't have to agree on how any earnest money is to be dispersed. There is a place, however, and it, is X amount going to the buyer, X amount going to the seller, whatever the case may be. Other terms. So this is where, okay, yes, we agree to terminate, but we want our due diligence money back. We want our inspection costs back, whatever. You can put that in other terms. The bottom part is only signed if they have reached an agreement. So if, as far as how earnest money is going to be dispersed. So, if they check up here, if they check do not agree, and then everybody calms down like a week later, and, the seller's like, yeah, we'll split that money with, or whatever the case may be. Then you can use the same form and you would complete the bottom part.
Question, so if seller refuses to release, here's my question, they don't, for whatever reason, not signing them, not releasing. Can it go back on MLS as active?
Absolutely.
Really?
Yeah.
Even though they haven't released people from the other, so they're marketing a property that's under contract
Wait. If the seller doesn't agree to sign what?
to release
Release,
each other of the contract.
oh, then no. But the property just sits there under
Can't
contract.
market it.
No,
Can you show it?
no,
Because it's under contract.
right,
So technically in MLS, it cannot be
Yeah.
marketed
right.
if it's under contract.
Now,
It has to stay under.
if they agree to terminate, but don't agree on the earnest money,
Oh, yeah.
that's two different things. Yes. But again, why wouldn't a seller sign a termination, a mutual termination? Buyer can't get the loan. You can't hold him hostage. You are not going to get blood out of that turnip from that buyer to make him buy your house. Move on. Let's agree to everybody's going to move on. Get your house back on the market so you can get it sold.
You can still sue for damages. If that was your intention.
That's-
or whatever.
Yeah. Outside of,
Outside of that.
for sure. Any questions on this one? I'm always at 2:07. Gosh. Just a couple more. I'm just going to show you real quick. Statement of agency, relationship, and compensation. This is where sometimes the builder communities will ask you, they were asking a lot of times for a copy of your buyer agency agreement, and we don't share our buyer agency agreement. So the NTAR created this form to use instead. So this is a form that you can use since we do not share our buyer agency agreement. And,
A quick question on that. Is that if I work with the builder and they are going to pay me for being a buy agent, is that the form I would use?
only if they ask you. So if you're working with a buyer and they're buying a new construction home and they have put you down when they go to look at the house and they do the registration with the builder, then they put you down as the representative, then only if the builder asks you for a copy of your buyer agency agreement would you need to use that form. They've gotten better where they're not asking as much anymore. So if they agree that they're going to pay you, it's going to be part of their contract.
Okay, so only if they ask, that's it.
Yeah, you got it.
Mhm.
And so I want to share this. Judy Weinstock was made aware of this form in a CE class that she was taking, and then she made me aware of it. And I think that it's a fantastic form to make it a part of your seller packet. Reminders for the seller going into closing, like unpair your devices, don't turn off the utilities until the day after closing, don't cancel your homeowner's insurance, all of those kinds of things. It's a great little reminder for them. Leave a forwarding address. And, all of those things that we don't always think about when we're in the hecticness of a move. So I think this is a great form. I put it up here to encourage you to use it. You can take the information and brand it to yourself. Whatever your branding looks like. And yeah, so I think it's a great form. Thank you, Judy, for bringing that to my attention. Standard Form 170. I don't have a copy of it. All right, my apologies for running over. I got to work on those 7 minutes and nail that down a little bit. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you for being learning based. And as always, let me know if you have any questions.